Welcome back. You're listening to My Conscious Dad right here on your hometown station, AM 1220 KHTS. And before we went on the break, we were talking about taking responsibility for our relationship. And now that we're back, I want to talk about some of the things I want to take responsibility for in my relationship, and then you can go ahead and take some of the responsibility things in our relationship. But for our relationship specifically, my number one thing was putting up walls and being guarded because I don't want to be vulnerable, or I don't want to be weak, or sometimes I just don't want to even deal with anything, that it's a lot easier to let things bounce off than to let people in, or in our relationship, I guess, specifically to let you in.
So what I'm hearing you say is that you're taking ownership or responsibility for not bringing your walls down to let me in, or let the rest of the family in, because I didn't hear this word, but again, see, this is why we talk about it like that. And what I'm hearing you say is that you don't want to be hurt or rejected or let us in because you don't want to appear to be weak.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much in anything that we don't want to do, or that we do happen to do, it really does come out of fear. And in this one specifically, in the past, I have experiences of bringing my walls down and sharing things about me, or being emotional, or telling somebody what's going on in my life or whatever, and not getting the response that I wanted specifically.
Right. All right. And I appreciate you sharing that, and appreciate you being honest. And I want you to know that I will never purposely hurt you. I love you, and every time you do open up and share, there are some times that if and when I am unconscious and thinking about, because I'm an entrepreneur, and sometimes entrepreneurs, they don't leave their jobs, because jobs 24/7. We're at home and we're with family, and could be sitting there listening to you and still be thinking about what I need to do tomorrow and that kind of stuff. So I'll take that in mind and make a conscious effort to be a little more present in those moments, and really seize those moments, because I know they're special. Spending time with family to me is very important, and I get to keep reminding myself that.
Yeah, and another thing too I want to point out is not really to take it personally, just because it's not necessarily that every single time I talk to you, I don't get the response I want, so I'm never going to do it again. So it's more just like, it could literally be the one time that you did that when I was 5, and it could last forever if I let it. So
no, absolutely.
And again, like you said, it sometimes, if you do it, it's not to be mean, or you unconsciously did it. So sometimes we as kids, we're still afraid, whether you do it consciously or unconsciously.
What's funny is when you do that to me, I do see the 5-year-old kid in you come out. I swear to God, your face transcends into the little 5-year-old that's afraid to open up or trust again, because either you got yelled at or you got scolded or whatever. So it's amazing that you're able to notice it and be aware of it, because that's when you can change it. When you're totally unaware of it and realize that your past is still creeping in and haunting and tainting your present opportunity to show up differently, then you can't win from that place. But being aware of it and acknowledging it and being honest to share it out loud, you can actually change that. I'm glad that you talked about not taking it personal, because that was one of mine that I wrote down, is that I get to take responsibility and make sure that I don't take things personal. Letting myself get my feelings hurt by what you say or what you do, I get to take responsibility and give you the space to choose to become the person that you want to be, and not try to make you be somebody that I want you to be. And that's important for me. And so I get to take responsibility for, however you show up. If you're angry, I get to create that space to allow you to be angry and let that out, and not be offended by it. Just because you're angry, whether it's at me or at something, I don't have to jump all over it and try to course correct you or fix you or make you not be angry. Or it's not even my job or my responsibility to even make you feel better about it. Sometimes just giving you the space to be able to vent that out and get that frustration out could be a healing process for you. And sometimes you might not necessarily want me to comfort you. You just want to be heard.
Yeah, I really like what you said. And for parents that are listening, I'm pretty sure your kids will be 110% appreciative of you giving them the space to let them be mad. Don't try to fix it. Don't try to make them unmad or angry, because it's a natural feeling. And I think we talked about this last week, was not we don't want to feel sad, or we don't want to feel anything that's icky or any type of bad emotion, but it's an emotion nonetheless, and we're going to feel it anyways, whether we want to or not. So we're already, as teens or as kids, we're already dealing with our own thing. It's even worse when our parents come in and they're like, what, yelling at us because we're angry, or we're giving, an attitude or whatever it is. So maybe just understanding that we're angry about something that doesn't have to do with you. Let me be mad about it for an hour, a couple hours, and then I'll get over it eventually.
Yeah, I read a book probably about maybe 8 to 10 years ago. And I don't remember the name of it because it's been that long, but the book was pretty profound, and it was talking about how to raise your children to be emotionally healthy. And one of the things that really stuck in my mind is the book talks about you as the parent that learns how to let their emotions run its natural course. And when you learn how to let your emotions out, and if you're frustrated, allow yourself and give yourself permission to be frustrated, and don't give a time slot on it. Just be wholeheartedly frustrated until it actually dies out. And so if that takes you a half hour or an hour to get off it, let yourself be that. And then what you can do is create an environment for your kids in your home so that they can learn to be frustrated or be angry and allow themselves to be that, so that it just dies out and that they learn to move through their emotions quicker, rather than telling them, hey, don't feel like that, or hey, don't be mad. And then what it does is it suppresses that emotion, and then that emotion now lingers with your son or your daughter for days, if not months. And so what you're doing is you're not teaching them how to let their emotions run through and run their course, and so they can get off it and let it out. That's the healthiest process, is to learn how to let your emotions come up and let it go. And so as a parent, my job, and I get to be responsible for creating that environment to let you have that space. If you're upset and you're angry, you want to go to your room, I get to let you have that space. There's sometimes I don't do that though. I'll come in, if you give me a little wiggle room, I'm going to come in and try to come, hey, give me a hug, come here, it's going to be okay. And so that's when I need you to go, hey Dad, I so appreciate you not giving up and wanting me to win, but this is one of those moments that I got to pull that trump card and ask you for my space. If you say that to me, I go, I got it, been there before, and then I'll go out and I'll totally give you whatever space you need.
Yeah, and I know for 100% fact that everybody in the whole world that's ever existed has felt that, icky, lingering feeling of some type of negative emotion. So I think as a parent, if you could just tap into the times you felt like that, every time your kid is upset or angry or sad, even if it's not that bad, but tap into the time where the worst thing happened to you, and maybe have some sympathy or empathy coming from that feeling, then you'll always be what your kid needs.
Here's something I want to own up to. I want to take responsibility for making sure that I let you know when I have an issue with you. I want you to be the first person I go to, rather than turning to your mom or to your sister and going, hey, what's wrong with Jazz? Or hey, instead of doing all that, I'm just going to take responsibility for going straight to you and saying, hey, I got an issue with you, or hey, do you have an issue with me? I'm noticing you're showing up like this. I want to be able to take responsibility for going straight to the source and cleaning it up. So that's what I get to work on is making sure that I go right to you and either clear up those issues, do some cleanup work, and also to be the peacemaker. So from this point forward, I'm making a conscious commitment and taking responsibility for being the peacemaker in all of our relationships.
Thank you. I'm excited to see that. One of the things I want to take responsibility for, and I think have been taking responsibility for since I've been a teen, because I have a terrible, or had and still have a terrible attitude problem where I react to things when they happen, and I have a bad attitude about it. So for a little while, what I was doing was, every time something bad happens, because I would get in trouble for the bad attitude, and every time something bad happens, I wouldn't even say anything. I would just leave and go to my room, because I don't want to get in trouble for the things that I know that I'm going to say in my temper tantrums. So, but going to my room and locking myself in the room for the rest of the night, it makes me sit with all that, like I was saying, those icky, like negative feelings. And even though I I avoided the getting in trouble part, I still got stuck in that ickiness that I didn't want. So, but I know that in certain experiences and certain times, there'd be times where, you would come to my room and then try to clean it up right then and there. And even though I was upset, that's exactly what I needed, was for you to clean it up right then and there. So there's some times where I don't want, your kids don't want to talk to you for the rest of the night. Just leave them alone, talk to them tomorrow. But there's other times where, they go to their room and all they want is someone to come in and say, hey, it's okay. Like, let's get over it right now instead of later.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that and being honest. And I'll make a better effort to give you that space and not give up. So you need to know that I'm your dad and I love you, and I'm going to keep knocking on your door, even if it's, maybe it's 2 hours later. And are you okay? Can I come back? No, give me another hour. I'm going to keep doing that because I love you and I want to clean it up, and I want to be able to make amends and make it right, so that we can make it right, and then we can forgive and forget and move on and keep staying focused on giving each other what it is that is necessary for us to continue to grow. It was funny because as you were talking, as you were sharing that and you were teeing that up, the first thing that came to my mind was being moody. And I don't know if that's is that like part of your sign? Is it, I don't know if is it part of your astrological sign of being moody, or?
Yeah, it just depends. It depends how the stars line up that day.
The other day, we came home and you had made this incredible cake, and I know you were beating yourself up because the cake didn't come out as perfect as you thought it was, from what I heard. And me and your mom were tasting cake. We're like, oh my God, this is like delicious. I've never tasted cake like this before. And so I think I knocked on your door. I said, hey, come out. And you were like, what do you want? I guess you're focused on your painting your nails. So you come out, I can hear you in your room, like shuffling stuff around. You come out in the hallway and you go, what do you want? And I go, I just want to say you did an amazing job on that cake. Thank you for that. And you're like, that's what you called me for.
No, it was because you sent me a text, then it sounded super serious. It said, come see me.
Come see me when you're available.
Come see me. And I was like, oh man, what did I do? Or what do they want? So when you came to my door, I was like, I tried to ignore the message.
Yeah. And I was like, hey, it was funny because I was like, hey, this cake is awesome. Thank you for that. You did an amazing job. And you were like, that's what you wanted to say. That's funny. All right, so here's the next one. So I'm committed to taking responsibility for making sure to speak up and ask for what I need or what's necessary for me when there's something that I need from you. Instead of expecting you to notice that I need something, then I'm going to take responsibility for using my voice and being honest and speaking up ahead of time, so that later on you don't go, come on, Dad, why didn't you just say something? So I need to take responsibility for speaking up when there's something that's necessary for me to get off my chest or something that I need. I'm gonna be forthright in that.
Yeah, and that I also want to take responsibility for that too. And make a commitment to start saying what it is I want and what I need from you, as a dad and as a parent. Because there's a lot of times where I just want you to read my mind and just do what I want, because I'm scared to say it. I'm afraid that if I say it and you don't want to do it, then you're going to say no, and I'm going to be, go back to my room sad and rejected.
I wish I had some kind of a meter that I could read your mind, because then I could stop my mind from making up stories that aren't necessarily true. And so that's been something that I've been practicing for years, is when you show up in a certain way that is unexpected, or when it kind of just throws me off a little bit, I have to pause the mind from not making up stories and then choose to come up with a story that's empowering, like, oh wow, maybe she's struggling with something right now, I'm going to give her space. And again, like the one earlier, is not take it personal. Just because you're up against something, I'm going. So here's my next one. So my next one is that I take responsibility for trusting that you will address me when something is bothering you, or that you have something, instead of me making up stories. Because if I make up stories about something that's not real, then I'm actually projecting that into the space. So I'm gonna take responsibility for trusting you, that you're mature enough and that you're wise enough and confident enough to be able to come to me and go, hey, I want to, talk to you about this, what you said or what you did. What did you mean by that? That you're going to call me out on some of that stuff.
Yeah, and going back to just making up stories in general, I was kind of saying earlier, think of the times when you as a parent had gone through something that was really sad or emotional, and have some compassion for your kid and realize that they're probably going through the same thing, something maybe even worse. So I strongly advise, because I try to do this sometimes, actually a lot of the times, it's something I've been working on for the last couple of years consciously, is anytime that something happens that I don't like or has some type of negative reaction from a friend or family or anything, I always try to think of how I could be compassionate to their response and how it happened or why. And sometimes I don't even necessarily need to reflect on me or what I said to cause it or anything, just that they're going through something and I remember a similar situation when I was on the other side and I was them.
Yeah, it's funny because last night I was speaking to a group here in Santa Clarita. It was the VITA program. I was talking to some parents, and there was a scenario that I talked about because one of the parents was struggling with seeing their child or their son or daughter in a certain way. And the point I wanted to make with him last night was that perception is everything. Perception is our own personal power. And the scenario I gave is we're all three in the restaurant waiting for our valet to bring our cars, pull them up, and one valet guy comes and says, we don't have time to get your cars, here are your keys, and just kind of tosses our keys on the table. And out of us three, two of us got offended because we thought that was rude and that was disrespectful and that they shouldn't be like that and yada yada yada, and then created all these stories from their perception of what they just experienced. And one of us didn't choose to create that kind of perception at all. That one of us chose to create a perception of the valet guy that, wow, maybe he's having a hard time. I too know what it's like to be frustrated and have a hard time. And they just grab their keys and they say, all right guys, see you later. And the other two that are riled up are wondering, how come you're not upset? Why aren't you upset at the valet for what he did? Don't you think it was rude? And don't you think? So I wanted to paint a picture that just because you've made up a story about what you experience and what you think is going on doesn't mean that's really the only option to choose. We can actually choose multiple perceptions. Why not choose the most empowering one? Why not choose the more compassionate one and give the guy a benefit of the doubt that maybe he's having a bad day, rather than choosing he shouldn't have a bad day because he's should be in service. He's in that job to make us feel better about ourselves. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and one of the things that's not as easy to, every time something happens, to say, stop, okay, what's the most empowering option? So sometimes it just takes practice, so don't react to that.
But it just takes one time. If you could just do it one time, then you have and you're driving away going, hey, I didn't lose my temper, and I didn't go into reaction, and I didn't go into resistance to the valet guy and make up all these stories the way that my other two friends did. It just takes you to do it one time for you to have that new awareness and have that kind of a breakthrough to say, okay, well, if I can do that there, I can do it anywhere. And so what happens is it opens up a whole new world of possibilities for you to choose from. And so moving forward in your life, you can actually access that part of you.
Yeah, and what's really cool too is if you're the person who's having the positive attitude, it makes your friends kind of calm down and say, oh, well, maybe I shouldn't be freaking out then.
Yeah, and it helps, with the one distinction that we talked about when it says when I said I'm gonna practice and I'm gonna make a commitment and take responsibility for not taking things personal. So when you have issues and you're frustrated with things that are going on with you, and you're being short with me, or maybe you just blurt something, or even flat out just say something mean to me, I can choose to not take that personal. one other option I can choose is to choose a perception that you're frustrated and that you're in reaction and that you're having a hard time with whatever's coming up for you, and so you're just blurting stuff out. And then I gotta ask myself, Alex, have you not ever been in that time where you've just said stuff out of your mouth and then regretted it? That's probably where she's at right now. So I'm just gonna choose to not take it personal, and I'm gonna choose to have the perception that she's just struggling with something in her life right now.
Hey, we have to take a short break, but stay tuned for more of My Conscious Dad right here on your hometown station, AM 1220 KHTS. Welcome back to My Conscious Dad right here on your hometown station, AM 1220 KHTS. We only have a couple of minutes, so I'm going to go ahead and let you finish off your list.
I actually only have a couple more, so I think it'll be quick. One of the things I want to take responsibility for in our relationship is making sure that I make myself available to you when you need me. I talked a little bit about this earlier. I live my life independently of you living your life, and we respect each other and not getting in each other's way as you're focused on what you're focused on. But I get to still be conscious and aware when you're around and keep checking in on you. But more importantly, if you need something, knowing how you operate most of the time, from my experience, is that you won't reach out for help. So I have to notice those little signs, and if I'm not open and available and I'm locked in on something, I can miss those opportunities, and it could be 3 days, 5 days, a week before I actually check in with you. So I get to be a little bit more proactive and be more conscious and more aware, and really open myself up to be available for you a little bit more when you do need me. I think that's my job, and that's what I want to be for you and your brother and your sister, is to be available for you whenever something's coming up. And not only that, but also looking to see what are some of the signs that is letting me know that you could be having something going on with you, and you just don't feel comfortable with reaching out to me.
Yeah, and like I said earlier, first I do those things. I do kind of try not to ask for help unless I really, really need it. So, or sometimes I drop subtle hints, like the other day I needed a printer, so I asked you what kind of ink we need, hoping that you would say, "I know, I'll go pick it up." So there's certain things that I do instead of just asking and saying, "Hey, you know what? I need this. Can you assist me with it?" And
then what's weird, because you said, "Oh, I'll just go buy the ink." I knew our printer it's an old, outdated printer. I've been wanting a new one for the last year or so, just haven't made the commitment to go get one. So it was a perfect opportunity for me to go, you know what, I'm on my way home, I'm gonna stop off at Best Buy and get that newer printer, because what's the point of spending all that money on that old ink, and it's just more effective. So you gave me an excuse to go buy us a new printer. How's that sound? And then the last thing I wrote was, I get to take responsibility for making sure that I'm aware of the words that I use when I talk, and speaking proactively and speaking in the present moment, always moving forward, seeking solutions rather than bringing up the past and focusing on the problem. And so I get to really be mindful of the words that I'm using and have them be proactive rather than reactive, because reactive just sets off a reactive button in you, and then before you know it, we're both reactive and we're arguing about something that's pointless. So I want to respond with positive words, being solution minded and reminding you how amazing you are, and that you can handle things. I get to be the voice that reminds you that you can handle stuff when you're doubting yourself. So that's what I get to take responsibility for, is going back to being that parent that empowers you and inspires you in those moments when you don't think that you can.
Thank you, because I know that there are times where, sometimes both of us, we let our past get in the way, so it's hard to.
That darn past.
It's challenging to. It's challenging to offer help, because I know sometimes I go through phases where I get frustrated that you, mom, brother, sister, everybody is asking me for help or asking me for something, and everybody always seems to need something from me, So I go through those phases where I'm like, I'm not gonna help anybody. I'm not gonna help anybody.
But know why we ask for help from you?
Because you love me?
No, it's not just that we love you. It's because you're reliable, you're credible, you're an amazing young lady, and that I know that if I ask you for something, it's getting done. And I can see how that can be a daunting task and a big weight to be on your shoulders if everyone is calling on Jazz to come save the day. And I know what kind of pressure that could put on you. But I hope that at some point in your life you can see that, you can choose to see it as a blessing and an attribute to how amazing you are, and what you got a good head on your shoulder, and when you lock on something, you're reliable, you're a great friend, and people really appreciate you for who you are for them, and you're an amazing young lady for our family. So we trust you. I think that's important.
Thank you. I'll try to keep helping out.
You can't try. You got to make a commitment. We're not trying in this show.
Okay.
What's your commitment?
I will commit to helping out as much as I can, even when I'm frustrated or annoyed.
And it's okay to say no, because if you got stuff on your plate, I want you to be able to say, no, Dad, I can't handle it right now. If you need it later or tomorrow, I can do it. That's all good. We're good on that, right?
Sounds great. Thank you. Hey, not stay tuned. We're leaving. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for joining us today on My Conscious Dad, right here on your hometown station, AM 1220 KHTS. We're here every Friday from 12 to 1 p.m.